This is Mike Hanawald, field agronomist with Beck's Hybrids. Wanted to share an update on what we're seeing so far after the cold temperatures that we experienced Friday night into Saturday morning. So in the early hours of Saturday, May 9th, we had some pretty extreme cold temperatures for this time of year, with temperatures dropping into the mid to upper 20s as the low that night. And so you can see this is a weather station from Waterville, Ohio, showing from midnight until noon on Saturday. And you can see there that we were below freezing from after 1 a.m. until almost 8 a.m., so almost 7 hours below freezing. And in particular, about 4 hours from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., we were below 28 degrees. And at this particular weather station, we bottomed out at 26.4 degrees at 6 a.m., so pretty cold. You can see here this picture. Here's some corn that was just emerging at that time. And so this picture was taken Monday morning, the 11th, so 2 days after the frost event. And you can see that the upper part of that coleoptile, that first leaf of that corn plant, is that bleached whitish yellow color, and the lower part is green. And so what that's showing you is that the part that is yellow, and that was the part of the plant that was above ground at the time of the frost event, and since then, in the last 2 days, that corn plant has grown slightly and should recover just fine from the freeze event. Just burned a little bit on the tip of the leaves. As we look at some corn that was a little bit more advanced at the time, so this corn is leafing out with that first leaf starting to show and separate from the rest of the plant. There again, you can see the upper part of that leaf is that whitish yellow bleached color where that frost damage was. But again, this picture was taken 2 days after the frost, and you can see some new green healthy growth underneath it. And so our corn that was still below ground or just starting to emerge should move past this freeze event just fine. However, we are getting some reports of some much more severe damage to corn that was further along. And so this picture comes from Travis Burnett, our Beck's agronomist in central Indiana. And you can see this corn had several leaves on it, turning almost the entire above ground portion of the plant turning brown, and would be really sickening to look at an entire field of corn that looks like this. However, we don't want to lose hope in that corn yet, because we have to look below ground as to what's happening. And so here's another picture from Travis there on the left, and you can see that once you get below the soil surface, that plant still appears healthy. And despite the poor appearance above the surface, what's going on below ground is what really matters, because at this growth stage of the corn plant, the growing point is still below the ground, indicated by that yellow arrow is where the growing point is. And you can see that that part of the plant is healthy. So we really need to give these plants some more time, especially as we get towards the end of this week, where we're forecasted with some warmer temperatures and rain. That will do a lot of good for these damaged plants and seeing how they recover. And so want to wait a minimum of 3 days, but preferably 5 days after the cold event. Go back out in a few days after we warm back up here and take a look at these plants. We should see some new growth. You can take your knife and split the plant in half. So the picture there on the right from Dr. Nielsen at Purdue University, and shows what a healthy growing point looks like. And so we want to see that yellow to whitish to cream color there at the growing point there under the soil surface. And if we see that, then there's a really good chance that despite how poor the plants might look on the surface, they are still healthy and should recover just fine from this frost event. So bottom line with corn, we just need to give it a little bit more time, reevaluate here in a few days, and look for that healthy growing point. Switching over to soybeans, there's definitely more concern about the emerged soybeans, because the soybean growing point is above the ground if those beans are emerged. And so then those should be a little bit more at risk. So here's a picture again from Travis there in central Indiana. Had some beans that had both the cotyledons and the unifoliate leaves starting to emerge there. And you can see those unifoliate leaves crinkled pretty severely. Again, the growing point for soybeans is above ground, indicated by that yellow arrow. So we want to look at that. Even though those unifoliate leaves are crinkled and pretty unhealthy looking, the cotyledons and the stem are fairly hardy at this growth stage, because this soybean plant is just getting off to a start. And so Again, still fairly optimistic that most of our emerged soybeans should make it. Most of the emerged beans in northern Ohio that I've seen or heard about didn't even have the unifoliate leaves out yet, still just had the cotyledons, and again, those are fairly hardy. But just like the corn, it's going to take some more time before we know for sure on these beans. There's obviously no guarantee that they're all going to make it, but we need to give them some more time and some heat, and then the rain later this week will help the beans that are able to recover, and then we want to evaluate the stand at that point and not jump to initial conclusions based on what things might be looking like now. So with corn or soybeans, the takeaway here is let's give them some time, let's give them some heat and moisture here at the end of the week and reevaluate at that point. If you have other corn and soybeans that still need planted, focus on getting all of your first round planting done before you worry about potentially replanting any of these fields. We need to give them a chance to recover. And especially with the soybeans, even if we have a little bit thinner stand, our PFR research has shown that a thinner stand of beans planted early is oftentimes better off as far as yield potential goes than a thicker stand planted late. And so let's just give these some time and reevaluate after some of the heat at the end of the week. Moving on to wheat. If you don't grow wheat, you can tune out because that's all I'm going to talk about here for the rest of this update. But for the wheat that's out there, there's some concern on how much the frost hurt the wheat. Well, most of our wheat in northern Ohio is still in the jointing stage. And so in the jointing stage, according to this chart here from the University of Kentucky, the wheat should be able to tolerate temperatures down to 24 degrees, and we did not get that cold in most areas. So the wheat should be okay, although it probably will start to show some symptoms. If we did have wheat further along in the boot stage, so the boot stage is when you can feel that head inside of those upper leaves as it's just getting ready to emerge. The minimum temperature there is 28 degrees, and so we could potentially see more damage there, but most of our wheat is prior to that stage. So here's a picture I took, again, morning of Monday the 11th. 2 days after the freeze event. This wheat is at the Feeks 8 growth stage, which is the beginning of flag leaf emergence, still well before that boot stage, so it should recover just fine. However, you can see that those leaf tips are turning into that purplish brown necrosis, so they're starting to burn at the tips there a little bit from the frost. If there is damage in the wheat, the two places that damage is going to show up is in either the flag leaf or the head or both. And so what I did was I pulled some of the most severe looking plants as far as those leaf tips being burned and took some closer up pictures of that. So here's a wheat plant. You can see the flag leaf there looks fairly healthy. There's a little bit of yellowing at the tip, but overall fairly healthy as it begins to emerge. And so fairly optimistic with that. Here's what some of the heads look like. So these are from two different plants that I, again, took some of the more severe plants. You can see that purplish browning of the tips of the leaves. And then very carefully, you can slice into the plant above the nodes and use kind of your knife and some tweezers and pull out the heads from those points. And so you can see what those heads look like. And at this point, still look very healthy. And so I'm optimistic on the wheat. We'll need to keep an eye again, just like the corn and beans. We need to give it some time and some heat here coming up that will do wonders for the crop. But keep an eye on the flag leaf, keep an eye on the heads. But overall, for most of our wheat here in northern Ohio, I'm fairly optimistic. So if you have any questions about this or any other agronomic topic, feel free to reach out to myself or your local Beck's representative. We'll definitely keep you posted as things progress and we warm up later in the week. Stay safe as planting continues on.